Hello, I'm Jen, and welcome back to my channel, Literary Love 123, where I like to drink a coffee and discuss the horror genre from an academic standpoint. But I also like to have fun just talking about books with all of you. Today's video is a more along the lines of fun type video, and it is a book tag. It is the horror BookTube tag. So I want to shout out Cliff at Cliff's Dark Gems for tagging me in this video. And I also want to mention that this was an original tag created by Alex at the Bookubus 4 years ago, and it was recently revived by MJ at Reading This Life for the month of May. And so I will link all of their channels down in the description box below so that you can go and subscribe to them as well. But let's get ready for this horror booktube tag. There are 13 prompts in this tag. And I also want to say that I am not going to pull down the books from my shelves that I mentioned, but I will put up an image of every book that I talk about. It's just I don't have the energy today to put my shelves into disarray. So sorry about that. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's get going on this tag. So, prompt number 1: how and when did you get into horror? As a young child, Scooby Doo was my favorite cartoon, like the original Scooby Doo. I'm old, Gen X, nearing 50. So that was my early experience with something that could be considered in the broader category, possibly of horror. And there was also a book that I absolutely loved in elementary school that I would always check out of the library. And that book was called 13 Alabama Ghosts and Jeffrey by Catherine Tucker Wyndham. If you didn't know, I live in Alabama. I've lived in Alabama since I was 2. And so that book, at the time I started reading it, it equally fascinated and terrified me. But obviously, I was more fascinated by it than anything because I frequently checked it out from the library. And I do own a copy now. But like I said, I'm not pulling stuff off my shelves today. I just don't have it in me to do that. And fast forwarding into my teen years, when I was 14 years old, I went to a friend's party and we watched the film adaptation of Stephen King's Pet Cemetery. And I absolutely freaking loved it. And as it just so happened, one of my best friend's moms was a huge King collector. So she had like this home library full of Stephen King books. So she let me borrow Pet Cemetery, and after that, she let me borrow Christine and so many other Stephen King books. So as a teenager, Stephen King really kind of reignited my interest in the horror genre. So, question number 2: what was the first horror book you read? If you consider 13 Alabama Ghost and Jeffrey horror, it would be that. If you don't, then Pet Cemetery when I was 14, because I probably would have read Goosebumps and stuff when I was young. But again, like I mentioned, I'm close to 50, so Goosebumps was not a thing for me. Number 3: what horror related goodness can we expect from your channel? From my channel, you can expect discussions of the horror genre from an academic and literary analysis standpoint. I do have a master's in English, and my thesis was focused on 4 of Stephen King's women characters. So you will definitely see some scholarly content from my channel. But you will also see just a lot of fun talk about books and a lot of what I call good for her horror, but more on that in just a minute. Number 4: do you have any favorite themes or subgenre within horror? Yes, the one I just mentioned. Good for her. I also like vampires. I also like coming of age stories, but as I'm getting older, I find that I'm really enjoying these stories centered around older characters, especially older women, especially in the category of good for her. So those would be my two kind of, I guess, two vampires and good for her. I guess three maybe coming of age and like feminine rage. That's kind of where I'm feeling things right now. But I do also like stories that deal with family trauma and secrets. I like gothic stories. So there's a pretty wide variety for me on what I enjoy. Number 5, name an underrated horror novel or author. So here I want to showcase Gemma Amore and Gwendolyn Keist. I feel like Gwendolyn Keist has gotten a lot more attention lately with her latest release, The Haunting of Velkwood, which is my favorite book of the year so far. But I don't think she gets the attention and recognition that she deserves. So I want to shout out Gwendolyn Keist and Gemma Amore. I want to just shout out her book Full Immersion, which was one of my favorites from last year, and The Folly, which is on my list of favorites of the year so far for this year. I also recently read a Destination horror collection where Gemma Moore writes stories about destination horror, and I enjoyed every one of those. And as far as her backlist goes, I recently read a folk horror book of hers called White Pines. And yes, it's folk horror, but it also has cosmic horror in it too. And I find that a lot of times there's kind of an intertwining of folk horror and cosmic horror. And folk horror is another one of my favorite subgenres that I forgot to mention in the previous question. But I do recommend Gemma Moore. She's got a wide variety. Full Immersion is very science fiction based. And what was the other one I mentioned? The Folly is coastal gothic. So she is a kind of has a wide variety of stuff. So just to shake it back down here, Gwendolyn Keist and Gemma Amore are two underrated horror writers that I recommend. Okay, I'm a little bit wordy. Let me move on. Number where I've lost my place in my prompts. No surprise there. Where am I? Number 6, name an overrated horror novel or author. I don't really have an answer for that one. So I'm just going to skip. I'm not going to try to explain why I don't. I just don't. Okay, number 7. Recommend 3 of your favorite horror novels. This is very difficult. My favorite horror novel of all time is The Fisherman by John Langan. Cosmic horror, grief horror, just stunning in the way that Langan writes, but also in the way that he builds this whole kind of mythology. He just floors me every time. The second book I feel like I have to mention here is The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty, because that had been my favorite horror novel of all time and my favorite novel in general, until a couple of years ago when I read The Fisherman. So The Fisherman kind of knocked off um, The Exorcist, but I still obviously recommend that. And the third one that I want to talk about, yeah, sorry, this is probably generic, but I can't help it. And that is It by Stephen King. What can I say? That story simultaneously has terrifying parts, but also parts that make me freaking bawl like a baby. Examinations of, you know, human monsters and the power of friendship and just all the good things. So yeah, I have to say It, The Exorcist, and The Fisherman. Number 8, recommend a book for someone who is new to the horror genre. So here, if you are interested in reading classic horror, I recommend The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. That is a good starting point for those interested in classics and the horror genre. And I feel like that one is, easier to understand than some of the other classics. If you are looking for a more contemporary kind of start into the horror genre, then I recommend Cackle by Rachel Harrison or House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. So, I guess I should tell you a little bit about Cackle. So, Cackle is one of those stories where it's almost like a coming of age for a woman in her early 30s, where she meets this older woman who may or may not have some witchy powers. And then House of Hunger is kind of a vampire adjacent novel, but it does something different. We follow a main character who goes to serve as a blood maid for a countess. And a blood maid is just pretty much what it sounds like, where you agree to give blood to the royals or the aristocrats, in exchange for food and lodging and kind of this fancy lifestyle. But as you can imagine, because it is in the horror genre, some stuff goes down. So if those are interesting to you and you're just getting started, there's some thoughts there for you. Okay, I lost my place again. Are there any book to film adaptations that you particularly loved or hated? I do love the film adaptation of William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist. That is my favorite movie of all time. Not just horror movie, but favorite movie, hands down, of all time. So I obviously love that one. An adaptation that you particularly hated. I mean, there's a lot of film adaptations that I hate. And I'm sure I could think of a lot. But off the top of my head, none is really, none of them are really standing out to me. So I'm not sure there. Number 10, how do you discover new or new to you horror books? BookTube, watching other, creators, Bookstagram, following authors, following presses, especially indie presses, just kind of through different, online sources. Sadie and, Mother Horror, Sadie Hartman, her, you know, information. She has a lot of ideas. As a matter of fact, she has the book that came out recently about 101 horror books to read before you're murdered. So that put a lot of new to me books and authors on my radar. And she also has one coming out focused on women writers in the horror genre. So I can't wait for that one. Um, Number 11, what was the last horror book that you bought? Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder. I ordered it from Amazon and it should get here today. I'm super excited. I'm a little behind on that one, but I'm excited to get to it soon. Number 12, what horror book is at the top of your wish list? That's a good question. And I have a lot on my wish list, but I'm trying to think of one that's highest. I think the one that I would have up as the highest, and this is a scholarly book, but it is a book about kind of diving into children in Stephen King stories. And the reason it is high on my list and I don't have it yet is because of the price. It is very expensive. I think the exact title is something like Childhood in the Kingdom of Stephen King, but that's a book I would really love to read. But the cost prohibits me from getting that one. So prompt number 13, the last one, is to tag others. I always struggle with tagging because I feel like I don't want to leave anyone out. So if you're watching this, you are tagged. If you like horror and you have a BookTube channel, please make a video of your horror BookTube tag and tag me in it so I can watch it. If you're watching but you do not have a YouTube channel, then please answer the prompts down in the comments below. I would really love to dialogue with all of you. So, thank you so much for watching. And thank you for sticking with me to the end since I got a little bit rambly here. If you stuck with me until the end, then leave me like a knife emoji or a vampire emoji since I mentioned vampires. Thank you again for watching. If you feel so inclined, please subscribe and hit that bell so you won't miss any more videos from me. Bye for now.